Good morning. It's Valentine's Day, right? I bet a lot of you are going out to dinner. You're going to take your loved one or your sweetheart out for a beautiful meal. And I'll bet you know a lot about the restaurant you're going to because you looked it up. You know if people have reviewed it nicely, if people had good service, you know the kind of food that they serve and the quality of food that they serve. I bet you know more about that restaurant than you know about your doctor or your surgeon if you're planning to have surgery in the next weeks or months. I bet you know more about the restaurant you're going to tonight for dinner than you do about your surgeon, about his history, and about his mistakes. And I find that sad, and I find it scary, and it's not your fault. It definitely is not your fault because you really don't have anywhere to look. Because when doctors make mistakes, either they are covered up or the family of the dead person sues them and their malpractice insurance settles and pays the family money. And along with that payment, just like with the sexual harassment lawsuits we've been talking about recently, there's this little non-disclosure agreement that you have to sign, which means that you cannot publicly disclose that the doctor admitted any wrong because the doctor doesn't admit any wrong. It never goes to court. Nobody testifies. You sit across from a table in a conference room and the insurance company shows up with a check with a lot of zeros after it. And then what happens to the doctor? Well, actually, his malpractice insurance goes up, kind of like when you have a car accident and your car insurance goes up. So his malpractice insurance goes up, but guess what? Tomorrow he can be back in the operating room. The only way he no longer practices medicine is when his malpractice insurance pays out so many claims that they drop him or her. And once that happens, then the hospitals no longer grant that surgeon privileges to practice at their hospital because you have to have malpractice insurance to practice medicine and to perform surgeries in almost every hospital in America. There's a reason you need that malpractice insurance because they make mistakes. They are human. They are human. But here's the thing. When a doctor, a surgeon especially, makes a mistake, people die. They die. And there is nowhere to go to find out if your surgeon has either been sued or has killed somebody. They don't put that stuff on their resume. And therefore, we know more about the stove we're going to buy, the TV we're going to buy, the restaurant we're going to eat at, than we do about the person that we are trusting with our very life. And that's scary. A couple stories here for you. First of all, some lawsuits do get made public. There was a very, very public lawsuit here in Lancaster many years ago. Twins were born to a very prominent family in our community. The grandfather of these twins was a very popular judge. And the uncle of these twins is, by chance, a very prominent malpractice and personal injury lawyer. And so the couple went in, they gave birth to their twins. They were a little premature, and a nurse on one of the twins was inserting some kind of a tube into the baby's chest, and she punctured his heart. And the baby died. Thankfully, his twins survived. But the baby died. And it became a very public story. And they sued. And this lawsuit actually was made public. The settlement was made public. They got $3 million from the hospital. The nurse, I believe, it was a long time ago, was fired. However, whether or not she actually lost her license, someone who knows more about the case than I do would have to tell me. Because here's the problem too. She could very well lose her license to practice in Pennsylvania, but it may not stop her from moving to New Jersey or Wisconsin or California and passing the boards there, and they may never know that she killed a newborn infant in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. That's all I'm saying. But yes, that one was made public. Most lawsuits, most malpractice lawsuits, you never hear about. And the doctors are never named. And it's a problem. It's a problem when you are facing surgery. Here's my next story. It's a good one because by the hands of fate, one of my viewers maybe had his life saved simply because he mentioned his upcoming gallbladder surgery to a friend. And the friend said, "Oh, who's doing the surgery? I know some doctors in the area. Who's doing your surgery?" And the guy just said, "Oh, the group," because all these surgeons, they have groups. He gave her the group name, and she looked at him and she said, "What's the surgeon's name?" And he told her. And she just said, "Oh." He said, "Wait a minute, what's wrong? Do you know this person?" She said, "Let me make a phone call." And she went out of the room. She made a phone call. She came back. She said, "Okay, I got permission to tell you this from the husband of the woman that the surgeon who is about to operate on you murdered." Well, she didn't say murdered, but basically a 40-year-old woman, a friend of this woman at the cocktail party, she had the same surgeon, and she died. And of course, my viewer didn't know anything about this. It had only happened a month ago. And this guy was scheduled for his gallbladder surgery like 2 weeks from that day. And he said, "Wow." So he called the surgical group and he said, "You know what? Haven't had a gallbladder attack in a while. I think I'm going to go with a different surgeon." And he wasn't going to say any more than that, except I'm canceling my surgery. And they asked him why. So he said, "You know what? Screw it. Because I heard that the surgeon that I was going to have killed a woman last month." "Oh, well, you know, all the hemming and hawing. Well, would you like to see another surgeon in our group?" "No, thank you. I'm just going to go somewhere else." And I'm happy to report my viewer just contacted me a day or two ago and said that he had his surgery and he is fine. Thank God. But this is the way we find out, unfortunately, that we may be going into surgery with a doctor who less than, like 30 days ago killed somebody. What happened was he nicked her bile duct. We're going to talk about that. I've got some information. I actually did some research on gallbladder risks because, surprisingly enough, it is one of the riskiest outpatient surgery you will ever go through, and yet everybody thinks it's no big deal. It is a big deal. Just like a hysterectomy is a big deal, and we're going to talk about that on my very personal show tomorrow. But here's the problem. This doctor, he isn't sued yet. Technically, he didn't commit any mistakes. It's only been a month, which is why he's just going on about his daily schedule, performing surgeries, maybe making more mistakes, who knows? Yes, they're human, but a customer, remember yesterday we talked about that you are a paying customer when you are a patient? You have as much right to know the history of your surgeon, the resume. How many patients has he lost on the table? How many patients has he operated on who died shortly thereafter from sepsis, from an infection, from something he did wrong? How many times has he been sued for malpractice? You have as much right to know that as you do to know that the restaurant you're going to eat at tonight, that 30 customers got E. coli from eating their burgers. You can find that out. You can find out how many people got sick eating at the restaurant you're taking your sweetheart to tonight. But try to find out how many people your surgeon, who is going to be cutting you open and removing one of your organs next week or next month, try to find out how many people he killed in the last year. You won't find it. There will be no record. Because once a malpractice lawsuit is settled, the only people who know about it is the family, and their lips are sealed because if they talk about it, they have to give the money back. And the money's all they have. It doesn't bring their loved one back, but at least they have something. Especially if, God forbid, it's the breadwinner of the family who was killed. They need that money to survive, to support the children left behind. So they're not going to talk. The doctor certainly isn't going to talk, nor will any of his staff, because then they're going to lose their jobs. And the malpractice insurance company has the records as well. And they're not going to talk, they're just going to keep a record of it. And if it happens too many times, if too many people die, and the same name keeps coming up, then they'll just cancel his insurance. And they'll feel that they did their job, instead of maybe saving his future victims. It's so weird how things go around in circles. Remember we talk about this sometimes in my earlier shows about connecting dots and full circles, and we talked about the Me Too movement and how many women were victimized by Harvey Weinstein because the first victims took payouts to shut up. And no lawsuit, a malpractice lawsuit that is settled, there is no admission of guilt. What they often say is, well, it's cheaper to pay out to settle the lawsuit than to fight it in court. Because the doctor really wants to prove his innocence and clear his name, but the insurance company made me do a settlement. Yeah, okay. Again, I say that a truly innocent person who is accused of something that they absolutely know they didn't do, you would think they would do everything they could to clear their name, and maybe even their conscience. Now, let's quickly talk about what I found out when I researched gallbladder disease. Now, gallbladder surgery has changed a lot since my mom had her gallbladder out in the 70s. When my mother had her gallbladder out, they cut her from just under her breastbone all the way down to her pelvic bone and spread her open and took out her appendix. I'm sorry, her gallbladder. Oh, and they got her appendix too. Sometimes they can do both when they open you up completely. And she was miserable. I mean, she had staples all up and down her stomach. She was in the hospital for a week. It was a long recovery, but she recovered. Well, recently, not so recently actually, they've been doing this for a long time, they can now do a gallbladder, and please forgive me because I'm not a doctor. They can do a gallbladder through something called laparoscopy, laparoscopic surgery. And that is what they do is they cut a couple little holes and they put a camera in one hole and the instruments, really little instruments, into the other hole. And the doctor is looking through, the surgeon is looking through the camera, okay? And guiding the instruments to carefully cut out the gallbladder. Here is why the gallbladder, even though it's done millions of times a year, is so tricky. There are ducts that are around the gallbladder, bile ducts. Bile ducts are what take poisons and waste out of our system, bypassing our abdominal cavity and put it into our intestines to be taken out as waste. I probably did that wrong, but it is truth. The bile should never be in our abdominal cavity. That's the point that we're going to make here. Because this is what goes wrong with gallbladder surgery when you do it through laparoscopy. These ducts are so thin and so close to the actual gallbladder you're trying to get out that they can get nicked. And if those ducts get nicked, that's when the patient dies, because all that bile in those ducts goes into the abdominal cavity and technically poisons the patient, and they become septic and they die. It's very hard to recover from it. And this actually happens. 1 in 1,000 people who have gallbladder surgery, this was what my research showed, 1 in 1,000 people die on the table. Most of those cases are because one of the ducts was nicked. Now, here's what's important, and this is something that we need to really talk about here, because this is my advice to all of you. You must ask questions. You must ask questions. And most doctors will tell you the truth on this question. How many of these surgeries, how many gallbladder surgeries have you performed? See, the problem is, unlike with, oh, I'm going to buy an LG TV. You got one, do you like it? You can't ask a doctor for his patients' names because of that stupid law. You know, we got to worry about HIPAA, confidentiality. You know, I can't say to a surgeon, I want a list of your satisfied customers so I can give them a call and ask, you know, how'd he do? Are you alive? Good, okay. You think he did everything right? I can't do that. But there are some things you can do. First of all, so many deaths were being caused during this laparoscopy procedure that the National Institutes of Health, this is where I have to look at notes. I don't usually, but I will on this because I want to get it right. National Institutes of Health, and I didn't get the year they did this, but they held a conference. And what they found that was the reason for the deaths was the cut of the common bile or common hepatic duct. And if it's cut or nicked, poison will seep into the abdominal cavity, causing poison to the patient. And most of these deaths occur with an untrained surgeon, someone who has performed 25 or less of these laparoscopy surgeries. Laparoscopy's complications have become such an issue. This is why the conference was called for. And they concluded that proper training, supervision, and experience was needed to make the procedure safe for everyone in every situation. But however, they did not recommend more stringent requirements or credentials for those performing this surgery. Why? Why not? It's kind of funny that I know veterinarians who get more training. I know dentists that get more training on root canal surgery than obviously a surgeon needs to perform this very delicate laparoscopy on your gallbladder. What is wrong with forcing these surgeons to prove before they get to a human that they know what they're doing? We know it's complicated, much more complicated than we think, because as a patient, we hear, ooh, I'm going to go in at 7, and by 10, I'll be home on my sofa. I won't even miss my soap opera. It's going to be great. And for most people, that's how it works. But for even that 1 in 1,000 who dies, that should mean something. Well, it's only 1 in 1,000. Oh yeah, only 1 in 1,000 unless you're the one. They say you have 1 in 1 trillion chance of winning the lottery. If you had 1 in 1,000 chance of winning the lottery, I bet you'd play more. Because that's a pretty good chance. I would like to see 1 in 1,000,000 chance of dying from a day's surgery, a laparoscopy procedure. That would be nice. 1 in 1,000,000. I would take those risks. But then when you get to certain hospitals, it's 1 in 7. That's scary. And the problem is, once again, what can we do to protect ourselves? Well, here you go. You can ask a doctor, a surgeon, how many of these procedures have you done? And they will probably tell you the truth. They will. It doesn't harm them to tell you. Now, here's what my viewer did when he went to the new surgeon, which is really cool. He actually went into the surgeon for the consult and said, yeah, I need my gallbladder out. Oh, by the way, how many of your patients have you killed? Have you killed anybody? And I'll tell you, the doctor was honest. or so we hope, he said, look, I have never lost a patient to gallbladder surgery. I did have one patient who had a minor complication and had to be moved to another hospital for expert treatment, but that patient is alive and well today. And my viewer was happy with that, and my viewer was very happy with the surgeon. And in fact, the surgeon even called the day before the surgery and said, you know what, I have the flu. I think we should reschedule your surgery because I'm not going to be able to do it, and I want to do your surgery. And my viewer said, awesome, thank you for calling. And they rescheduled it, and my viewer had the surgery, and all went well. And what I just told you is important for tomorrow's show. Because the surgeon who had the flu could have sent a replacement from his group, another surgeon. And my viewer never would have known it because he would have already been prepped for surgery. That's what happened to my mother. And it shouldn't happen. It should not happen unless you are in an emergency situation. So I applaud my viewer, first of all, for doing the right thing and being an advocate for himself, which is what this series of shows is all about. You have to be an advocate. You have to ask questions. And it's not a shame. You should never be ashamed to say point blank, how many people have you killed this year, Doc? Because, see, I don't want to die. I have things to do after my surgery. And I plan on coming through the surgery with flying colors. And I'm counting on you to do it. I'm counting on you. Make sure the doctor knows how much faith you have in them, him or her. I'm counting on you. I have a family. Let them know you are a human being, not just another body with a gallbladder that needs taken out. Tell them about your family. Even if they charge you a little extra because the consult goes long, tell them who you are. Tell them why it's so important that you recover quickly. What you have to look forward to. Make yourself human to them. Make them feel like they are part of your family now because they are going to be holding your life in their hands. Let them know that you are trusting them with the most precious thing you have, your life. I will see you back here tomorrow for a very, very personal show. And I think it will really open your eyes. It's actually going to be called A Tale of Three Doctors. So please come back tomorrow. Happy Valentine's Day for those who are celebrating. And remember this, you don't need one day to show your love, especially for your husband or your wife or your girlfriend or your boyfriend. You should be letting them know every single day what they mean to you because life is short. And as this series of shows has, I think, explained to all of you and opened your eyes to, no one is guaranteed a tomorrow. And no surgery is minor. And no doctor is perfect. Political Paula, out.